That's more or less a comment, but.
Yes, I agree with that statement. I think that you're correct. It's certainly slavery has gotten less obvious than it was, but it's more widespread now because of what you're pointing out. The plantation basically is enlarged to be the entire country, and now basically you've got multiple plantations. And Stefan Molyneux does a very good job of explaining this from Free Domain Radio. But the idea being that these countries are really just large plantations, and we don't really have. We don't have the taskmaster with the whip and the horse standing behind us making sure we do what we're supposed to, but they're still out there. They've just changed form, and now that the master is running the plantation's educational system, then people are very, very more likely to support this current version of slavery because they've been raised in it, and it's very obscured, so it's difficult to realize for people that that's actually the system they're living in. And just going to another plantation is not going to solve the problem of your enslavement.
With that in mind, do you feel, in your opinion, Ian, do you feel that people are psychologically programmed to accept their slavery?
Well, of course. I mean, they've been educated by or indoctrinated by the slave masters themselves in the government school system. So it's well within their interest to ensure that people believe that they're free, because no one is more, I don't know who said this, I'm paraphrasing someone, but no one is more hopelessly enslaved than those who believe they're free. So it's a very important illusion for them to propagate.
I want to say that was Marx.
I'm pretty sure it's somebody that's a lot older than we are, but it's a great statement.
Ian, Speaking on the subject of government-funded schools, a lot of people have used, for example, the excuse of if we didn't have a overwhelming bureaucracy like the Department of Education, we wouldn't have protection for those, say, like special education students, for example. Now, if, say, we were in a privatized school setting, how would the price? And another thing that they mention is that a privatized school system would be too expensive for people less than average economic means to afford it. Wouldn't the competition?
Well, that's nonsense. I mean, if you look, there was a story I saw recently out of, I think it was India, where they were talking about how just the poorest of the poor people over there, and they are poor people there, actually are sending their kids to private school, and it's something like $1 a month or $1 a week or something very, very affordable for them, and that's because there are hundreds of schools that are competing for these students. And
I remember you guys talking about that on Free Talk Live, actually.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention the competition thing. I was going to follow up. Wouldn't the competition lower the prices if we allowed for that competition?
Clearly. Yeah, I think so. And even if for whatever reason, I mean, that's what competition does, is it brings down prices and brings up quality. So the idea that private education would somehow be more expensive than government education is pretty absurd. I mean, here in Keene, New Hampshire, they spend something around $14,000, $18,000 per pupil on average to get them a crap can government education. And you just think about that. What would a teacher like to make, ideally? If you're a teacher and you've got 20 students that you're teaching, and each one of those students' parents are paying $2,000 a year for an education, then that's $40,000 for that teacher right there. I mean, the whole idea that you'd need $15,000 per student seems pretty absurd to me. And by the way, in the India situation where people are paying $1 a month or $1 a week or whatever it is for education, there are still people that can't afford that. And lo and behold, the people that are running those schools are actually just giving away a bunch of they're just giving away a bunch of education to people that can't afford it simply because it's good PR for them. Look, we're giving all this education away. I'm sorry, guys, can I put you on hold for a moment? One of my show hosts for the network is urgently trying to reach me, so I apologize about this.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
I'll be right back.
That's a really good question.
I have no problem with him being on hold. He's actually doing this for a living. We're still doing it at the hobby stage.
Yeah, more or less. What do you think so far?
Well, didn't the whole public school system come about because private schools weren't educating enough people?
Well, that's the claim, more or less. The public school system was actually based a lot on the Prussian model, and the Prussian model was about getting schooling for industrialization and stuff like that, and also for teaching people to either be factory workers or soldiers. They actually had two separate school systems, I understand. Of course, I'm not the expert here. You have to talk to I forgot the guy's name, but he does the School Sucks podcast. And more about that. He's very educated in that sense.
I'm back, guys, by the way.
Okay, cool. We were talking, Ross, Adam, and I were talking about how the Prussian, I believe.
Yeah, the Prussian education model. Unfortunately, I couldn't remember the guy who does, his name offhand, the guy who does School Sucks podcast.
Well, the question was, didn't public schooling come about because there were so many children going uneducated in this country?
No, public schools, as I understand it, came about because, and I don't remember which one did which, but the Protestants were trying to recruit people, and the Catholics were trying to recruit people into their religion, and they, one or the other, and I forget which, but one or the other essentially decided that they would be able to bring more people over to their ideas if they could institutionalize their views in the education system by using the state. So it was really just a method for people to control others and influence them. People were getting fine educations outside of that. In fact, probably were getting better educations back then than they were today.
Yeah, I understand that there was a lot of fear around the Catholic scourge at the time. I'm not sure if that's what they called it, because a lot of the Catholics, priests and schools were put up for free education for anyone who wanted to get an education, and this caused a lot of fear amongst the good Protestants, quote unquote, for the day and age, because they were afraid that the Catholics had some kind of dual loyalty with Pope, essentially.
Thank you. You know the story better than I. I appreciate that clarification. So, yeah, it wasn't about people not getting an education. And even if that was true, even if there are, and there likely would be, some parents that just don't care about educating their kids, I'm sorry, that just doesn't justify stealing from people and threatening to steal their homes, which is what happens if you don't pay for education. Men with guns come and literally steal your home from underneath you, and if you don't leave, then and you want to resist and you actually think that you own your home, then they might just kill you.
Are you referring to the Internal Revenue Service, sir?
No, I'm talking about property taxes. That's usually enforced by the local gang with guns.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, actually, it kind of reminds me a little bit. I was called for jury duty the first time this year, a couple months ago, and I'm sitting there, and
nice segue.
Yeah, I had no problem actually sitting on the jury, but eventually came to the point where the defense lawyer asked whether or not there's anyone who just didn't want to be there that day, and I couldn't say I didn't want to be there because it was actually a place where it could have a cause. Actually, it looked like someone had beaten his wife, and in my point of view, that meant that I could actually sit there with a free conscience and just look at the thing, and because I wasn't like putting some poor kid away for some marijuana charge or something. And he asked this question, and I had no problem sitting even that day. It seemed to be an open shut case. Only little question was this kind of consensual, some kind of sexual act from my point of view. But the question more or less came down, does anyone who's going to be here today? And I kind of raised my hand and said, you know, there's one reason why I'm really here today, and that's because if I didn't come here today, I would be sitting in his seat as soon as you guys found me. And I said, well, why'd you come here today? And I said, well, because I don't want to sit in that guy's seat. I'm not ready to do that kind of stuff yet. And, of course, this caused everyone in the whole room to laugh. And subsequently, I was number like 5 or 6 in the line, and I was the first person skipped. So...
Yeah, about right.
Which brings about, you know, speaking of judicial system stuff. Now, I was Now, I talked to a very progressive-minded U.S. history teacher, speaking of